The role of evidence in criminal justice. Criminal evidence plays a crucial role in the justice system, serving as the foundation upon which cases are built and adjudicated. Evidence, in essence, encompasses any information or material presented in court to prove or disprove a fact. Its significance cannot be overstated, as it provides the factual basis for determining the guilt or innocence of an accused individual. The types of criminal evidence are diverse, including physical, documentary, and testimonial forms. Physical evidence, such as fingerprints, weapons, or DNA, often holds immense weight because of its objective nature. It connects individuals or actions to a specific event, forming a tangible link between the crime and the accused. Documentary evidence, including records, emails, and written agreements, offers insight into intentions and actions, revealing patterns that may corroborate or dispute allegations. Testimonial evidence, derived from witness statements or expert opinions, adds a human perspective to the case, providing first-hand accounts or specialized knowledge. Evidence must meet stringent legal standards to be admissible in court. Relevance, reliability, and authenticity are critical criteria that ensure only credible and pertinent information influences the outcome. The chain of custody, a process ensuring that evidence is preserved and handled correctly, is equally vital in maintaining its integrity. Mishandled proof can lead to questions of credibility, undermining its value. Module 1. Courts and Criminal Evidence. Courts and Criminal Evidence. The foundation of justice. Courts serve as the cornerstone of the justice system, functioning as arenas where legal disputes are resolved and the rule of law is upheld. Central to this process is the presentation and evaluation of criminal evidence, a critical element in ensuring fair trials and just outcomes. Criminal evidence, whether physical, testimonial, or circumstantial, provides the basis for determining the guilt or innocence of an accused individual. The reliability, admissibility, and interpretation of such evidence directly influence the court's ability to deliver justice. The rules governing evidence in criminal cases are designed to maintain fairness and protect the rights of all parties involved. Evidence must meet strict legal standards to be admitted in court, ensuring it is relevant, material, and not unduly prejudicial. This rigorous scrutiny aims to uphold the integrity of the judicial process, balancing the need to uncover the truth with the protection of individual rights. For instance, the exclusionary rule prevents illegally obtained evidence from being used in court, safeguarding constitutional protections against unlawful searches and seizures. Courts rely on various types of evidence, including forensic analysis, eyewitness testimony, and digital evidence. Each type comes with its own set of challenges and limitations. Forensic evidence, while often seen as definitive, could be more accurate and subject to human error or misinterpretation. Similarly, despite its emotional weight, eyewitness testimony is vulnerable to inaccuracies stemming from memory flaws or biases. The increasing use of digital evidence presents new legal and ethical questions concerning privacy and data security. The United States Constitution, the supreme law of the land. The United States Constitution is the foundational legal document that establishes the framework of the federal government and delineates the rights and responsibilities of its citizens. Adopted in 1787 and ratified shortly after, it remains a living document that governs the structure and function of government while safeguarding individual liberties. Comprised of the preamble, 7 articles, and subsequent amendments, the Constitution outlines the separation of powers among the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, ensuring a balance that prevents any single branch from dominating. It also enumerates fundamental rights, such as freedom of speech and due process, which protect individuals from government overreach. Federal and state courts are bound to abide by the Constitution because it is the supreme law of the land, as explicitly stated in Article 6, known as the Supremacy Clause. This clause mandates that the Constitution, federal laws made under it, and treaties entered into under its authority are the highest form of law in the United States. State constitutions, regulations, and judicial rulings must conform to the Constitution, and any conflict renders those state-level provisions null and void. The judiciary's adherence to the Constitution is further enforced by judicial review, a principle established in the landmark Supreme Court case Marbury v. Madison, 1803. This authority allows courts to evaluate the constitutionality of legislative and executive actions. The Constitution thus serves as a unifying legal standard, ensuring consistency in governance and justice across all states. Courts interpret its provisions to address contemporary issues, reflecting its enduring relevance. By abiding by the Constitution, federal and state courts uphold the rule of law, protect democratic principles, and maintain the nation's commitment to a government accountable to its people. This adherence is vital for preserving the liberties and structure that define the United States. Understanding federal court jurisdiction in criminal cases. Federal courts in the United States have jurisdiction over specific criminal cases as dictated by the Constitution and federal laws. Unlike state courts, which handle most criminal matters, federal courts address cases involving violations of federal statutes, crimes occurring across state or national borders, and offenses impacting the federal government or its functions. One of the primary areas of federal court jurisdiction includes crimes explicitly defined under federal law. These range from offenses such as drug trafficking, immigration violations, and fraud involving federal programs to acts of terrorism and cybercrimes. Federal courts also hold jurisdiction when a crime occurs on federal property, such as military bases, national parks, or federal buildings. Additionally, cases involving federal employees in their official capacity or crimes committed against federal institutions fall under this category. Federal jurisdiction often applies to crimes that cross state boundaries, like interstate drug distribution, human trafficking, or organized crime operations. When the criminal activity involves multiple states or foreign nations, federal courts ensure that such cases are adjudicated within a unified legal framework, preventing jurisdictional conflicts between states. Federal courts also handle crimes against civil rights or discrimination that violate federal statutes, such as hate crimes or violations of equal protection laws. These cases are crucial in upholding federally protected rights that need adequate attention in state courts. Ensuring justice. The purpose and role of a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is a critical stage in the criminal justice process. It assesses whether sufficient evidence exists to proceed to trial. This proceeding occurs after the prosecution files a criminal complaint and aims to determine whether there is probable cause to believe that the defendant committed the alleged offense. During the preliminary hearing, the prosecution presents evidence and may call witnesses to establish the likelihood of the defendant's guilt. The defense can cross-examine these witnesses and challenge the evidence presented. Unlike a trial, the purpose here is not to determine guilt or innocence, but to evaluate the strength of the prosecution's case. The judge must decide if the evidence shows probable cause that a crime was committed and that the defendant was involved. If the judge finds probable cause, the case proceeds to trial. The charges may be dismissed. The primary purpose of a preliminary hearing is to prevent unwarranted prosecutions by ensuring that only cases with sufficient evidence move forward. This safeguard protects individuals from the strain and expense of a baseless trial. Additionally, it allows the defense to preview the prosecution's evidence, aiding in preparing a robust defense strategy. Sometimes, the information revealed during the hearing can lead to plea negotiations, potentially resolving the case without a full trial. It's important to note that the procedures and significance of preliminary hearings can vary across jurisdictions. In some areas, they are standard in felony cases, while in others, they occur only upon the defense's request. Despite these differences, the fundamental objective remains consistent: to ensure adequate evidence to justify trial proceedings, thereby upholding the criminal justice system's integrity and protecting individuals from unfounded legal actions. Exercising peremptory challenges in jury selection. In the legal system, jury selection is a critical trial phase. Both parties aim to assemble a panel to evaluate the evidence and render an impartial verdict fairly. Beyond identifying potential jurors who are explicitly disqualified due to statutory reasons or explicit biases, attorneys also have a strategic tool, the peremptory challenge. This mechanism allows a party to exclude a prospective juror without providing a specific justification, provided the challenge does not violate legal protections against discrimination. Peremptory challenges are rooted in the principle that even subtle biases or intangible factors could interfere with impartiality. Attorneys may base such challenges on a juror's demeanor, background, or perceived inability to connect with the party's case. For instance, an attorney might exclude a juror whose body language suggests disengagement or whose personal experiences might align with the opposing side's narrative. This process, however, operates within significant legal constraints. A landmark decision in Batson v. Kentucky established that peremptory challenges cannot exclude jurors based solely on race, gender, or other constitutionally protected characteristics. If one party suspects such discrimination, they may raise a Batson challenge, requiring the other side to provide a non-discriminatory reason for their peremptory strike. Juror testimony. Navigating the boundaries of fairness and legal procedure. The principle of impartiality is central to the role of a juror, whose duty is to evaluate evidence presented during a trial without bias or undue influence. However, unique circumstances may arise where a juror possesses information relevant to the case, creating a situation where their testimony becomes an issue. Generally, jurors are restricted from testifying to preserve the deliberation process's integrity and avoid the risk of biasing other jurors. However, exceptions exist, particularly when external influences or irregularities are alleged to have compromised the trial's fairness. A juror may testify about issues affecting the validity of the deliberation process, such as allegations of external prejudice, coercion, or misconduct during deliberations. For instance, if an external party attempted to communicate with jurors or influence their decision-making, a juror's testimony could be essential to identifying and addressing this impropriety. Similarly, a juror might testify to clarify any misunderstanding of evidence introduced during the trial, particularly if their own experiences or observations during jury duty intersect with the facts of the case. It is important to note that juror testimony rules aim to strike a delicate balance. While courts must ensure that external factors do not compromise justice, they must also maintain the sanctity of the jury's decision-making process. For this reason, jurors are generally precluded from testifying about their mental processes or the internal dynamics of deliberations, even if such testimony might shed light on their verdict. Understanding attorney-client privilege and its waiver. Attorney-client privilege is a fundamental principle in the legal system that protects communications between clients and their attorneys from being disclosed without the client's consent. This privilege encourages open and honest communication, ensuring clients can share all relevant details with their attorneys without fear that the information will be used against them later. The privilege applies to confidential communications made to seek or provide legal advice, fostering trust, and allowing the attorney to provide effective representation. The privilege, however, is not absolute and can be waived under certain circumstances. The authority to waive attorney-client privilege typically rests with the client, as the privilege exists for their benefit. A client may intentionally waive the privilege by voluntarily disclosing protected communications to a third party. For instance, if a client shares privileged information with someone outside the attorney-client relationship, the confidentiality may be deemed forfeited. Waivers can also occur inadvertently, such as through carelessness in handling documents or communications. Sometimes, the attorney may disclose privileged information only with the client's explicit consent. It is critical to note that the privilege belongs solely to the client, not the attorney. An attorney cannot unilaterally waive the privilege nor disclose privileged communications without proper authorization, except in rare cases where disclosure is required by law or ethical obligations, such as preventing a crime. Organizations, as clients, face additional complexities regarding privilege. In corporate settings, the privilege may be waived by authorized individuals, typically senior management, acting on behalf of the organization. Nonetheless, any waiver must be intentional and carefully considered, as once the privilege is waived, the protected communication becomes accessible to opposing parties. Therefore, safeguarding attorney-client privilege requires diligence, discretion, and a clear understanding of its scope and limitations. Understanding direct examination, a cornerstone of legal proceedings. Direct examination is a pivotal component of courtroom litigation, forming the foundation of a party's presentation of evidence. It involves questioning a witness by the party who has called that witness to testify. The primary objective of direct examination is to elicit information that supports the legal arguments or claims of the party conducting the examination. This process is structured to present facts clearly and persuasively while adhering to the rules of evidence. During direct examination, attorneys aim to build a coherent narrative through their witnesses' testimony. The questioning must be non-leading, allowing the witness to provide information in their own words rather than merely affirming statements posed by the attorney. This technique ensures the credibility and authenticity of the testimony while reducing the potential for undue influence or manipulation. Direct examination also serves as an opportunity to humanize witnesses, making their testimony relatable and understandable to the judge or jury. By drawing out descriptive details, attorneys seek to create a vivid picture that aligns with their case theory. The questions posed during this phase are carefully crafted to focus on relevant facts while avoiding objections for irrelevance or speculation. The scope and limitations of cross-examination in legal proceedings. Cross-examination is a fundamental aspect of legal proceedings, serving as a tool for testing the reliability and credibility of witnesses. It occurs after a witness has provided testimony during direct examination, allowing opposing counsel to question the witness further. The primary purpose of cross-examination is to challenge the testimony presented, reveal inconsistencies, and assess the witness's truthfulness. However, the scope of cross-examination is typically limited to matters addressed in direct examination unless it pertains to the witness's credibility. The restriction on exceeding the scope of direct examination is designed to maintain procedural fairness and focus. Courts generally aim to ensure that cross-examination remains relevant to the issues introduced during direct testimony. Allowing cross-examination to stray into unrelated areas would create unnecessary confusion and prolong the trial. However, credibility is an exception to this rule. A witness's credibility is always at issue because it directly impacts the weight and reliability of their testimony. Cross-examination aimed at credibility ensures that the jury or judge can fully evaluate whether the witness's account is truthful, accurate, and unbiased. Exploring credibility during cross-examination may involve questioning a witness about prior inconsistent statements, possible motives to fabricate testimony, or issues such as bias, memory, or perception. This aspect of cross-examination serves a broader purpose in the justice system by safeguarding against false or misleading evidence. Cross-examination upholds the adversarial system's commitment to uncovering the truth by probing a witness's credibility. While this focus may broaden the scope of inquiry, it remains aligned with the fundamental goal of ensuring that all evidence presented is subject to rigorous scrutiny. Thus, the restriction against exceeding the scope of direct examination finds balance in its exception, ensuring both relevance and fairness in the judicial process. The role of evidence in advancing the federal criminal trial process. Evidence is the cornerstone of the federal criminal trial process, shaping every stage from investigation to sentencing. Its role begins with initiating a case, as law enforcement relies on evidence to establish probable cause for arrest and to support the filing of formal charges by the prosecution. At this stage, evidence substantiates the government's claims and ensures adherence to constitutional safeguards, such as the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unlawful searches and seizures. During the pre-trial phase, evidence undergoes rigorous scrutiny through motions and hearings to determine its admissibility. Rules of evidence, including relevance, reliability, and absence of undue prejudice, govern this process. The defense and prosecution argue over the inclusion or exclusion of evidence, shaping the parameters of the trial. Discovery procedures further ensure transparency, allowing both sides access to the evidence, which aids in case preparation and upholds the defendant's right to a fair trial. In the trial, evidence becomes the primary means the prosecution seeks to meet its burden of proof, establishing the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Testimonial evidence, physical exhibits, and expert analyses are presented to the jury, which evaluates their credibility and weight. Cross-examinations are critical for both sides to challenge and reinforce evidence, influencing the jury's interpretation. Evidence again plays a pivotal role in the sentencing phase. Judges consider aggravating and mitigating factors, often presented as evidence, to determine appropriate penalties. Victim impact statements, character references, and forensic reports contribute to decision-making.